He's Aragorn. She's Arwen. I'm Gandalf, the gray and then the white. Actually, probably more gray than white. He's Legolas. She's Galadriel. I'm Gimli. No, that ain't it either. We are not Lord of the Rings, but we are in quest of that one ring.
One ring to rule them all.
But we are Vikings Report with Drew and Ted and Chris, although Chris is not here with us this week. Drewster, how are you?
I'm the master of the Shire.
I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve.
Ted, I'm doing well. I'm ready to go. Finally seen that movie today because we're doing the movie naturally. I hadn't seen it up till now, and man, that was a pretty weird thing to look at, but I was kind of like just watching it, and then Liv Tyler showed up, and I got really interested at that point. But
all was right with the world with you?
All was right with the world, and the Vikings are kind of the Fellowship of the Ring. They're trying to get the ring. I mean, there was one ring that ruled over the other rings or something. I'm kind of lost on the whole story. You probably know it a lot better than me, but
one ring to rule them all, brother.
Yeah, I know the guy with the hair, the slicked back salon hair, the blonde guy that was really good with the bow and arrow.
Yeah, that's Legolas, the elf.
He's Ginkle. He's Van Ginkle. Harrison Phillips is Gimli.
I just want to put this out there right now.
Yeah.
Frodo was a bitch. He was a little bitch. Of the two, Samwise Gamgee was the real hero of that little special ops detachment right there.
I can't do this, Sam. I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going. Because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
Frodo dies halfway to Mordor if it's not for Sam. I'm just saying.
Died like 3 times in that movie. I mean,
oh God.
Yeah, he wasn't much of a fighter himself. He was running a lot. Good movie though. Lots of good effects and everything. It was pretty cool.
I read the books. I'm a big fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, the author. Based that book off of his experiences in World War I. Fought in the trenches for Great Britain, British Empire back then, I guess, as it were.
The Fellowship of the Ring for the Minnesota Vikings. They head into Soldier Field. We got a big breakdown tonight, Ted, as the Vikings try to go to what? 9-2?
9-2, man.
Man.
Yeah.
9-2.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about that. Is it kind of a fluke or not? Big picture, we're going to turn Sauron's eye to the NFC North.
I see.
Give us the eye! Man, just saying 9-2 gives me a semi.
I didn't actually mean for that to be dirty. It just came out that way.
We're going to preview the game as we always do. And you said we're not doing trivia tonight because we're not going to do trivia until Chris gets back with us. But you do have a milestone this evening, correct?
Yes, I have a milestone for our head coach, the great Kevin O'Connell.
All right. Ruby, are you out there?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, but that was the stupidest movie I've ever seen.
It was awesome. How did you not like it?
It was loud and weird and dumb.
You find more cheer in a graveyard.
Are you just not kind of like your fantasy teams this year?
Oh! We got to go choo-choo on that one.
Whatever.
Ted won 7 of 11 weeks, folks.
You have no power here.
I don't even think people are picking other teams at this juncture.
I'm kind of smoking it this year.
Kind of what?
I'm doing very well. I guess, let me rephrase. Phrasing.
You want to play me hard?
Phrasing. No, I don't.
Well, then you better nut up.
Phrasing.
Because I've swallowed just about as much as I can take from you.
Hey, phrasing.
You're like Frodo and Bilbo Baggins. Remember, the Bears had the first Hobbit. Remember that Kevin Butler, that weird looking Kevin
Oh,
Butler?
yeah, yeah.
He was a Baggins. That guy was
Butthead.
very
Butthead
strange.
Baggins, I believe his name was.
Oh, he was a Baggins fool. He probably had the big hairy feet to go along with it. He kicked those field goals. Like the Hobbit, Ted seems to have powers with the no one cares about your fantasy team because you are channeling something.
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
This is it. This is what you've been working for.
One fantasy team to rule them all, baby.
Yeah, and if you're watching and you're part of our contest, dude, Reggie moved into second, but between first and like 12th, there's barely any points. Everybody can jockey around. It's crazy right now. Crazy. Yeah. Dan Lee, Dan Henneman, the great Lauren Humlin, she's in there. She's moving up the board. Trooper 88. Raymond Hoagland, they're all in it to win it, but it's really coming down to something special.
Well, speaking of nobody cares about your fantasy team, the rules have not changed since week 1. We posted those and talked about them the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. If you want to learn about them, you can go back and watch those videos. But if you would, Ruby, post my winning team for this week again and then post the other 3 losers. Those are your fantasy teams. As always, pick who you think is going to be the winning team this week in the comment section down below. And as always, before I forget, head on over to purpleplaneforums.com, our partner and home on the internet, purpleplaneforums.com. Great content, great community, great folks, great contests. None of the garbage that you see on social media, on Twitter or X or Facebook fan pages, none of that stuff. purpleplaneforums.com. And then, although Chris is not here, he's got a real job. He doesn't have time to watch things like Lord of the Rings, which is, I mean, have you watched, how many of those movies have you watched now? Just the one?
Yeah.
Are you only going to watch the one? You're going to watch all 3?
No, I was going to watch that Two Towers one because you said those are the 2.
Please,
A lot of great acting and a lot of great stuff going on, and it's a great idea. And I read those books when I was younger. Yeah, believe it or not, I read a book or 2 when I was younger.
That wasn't the articles in Playboy?
I never read any articles in Playboy.
Oh, that's the only reason I picked up Playboys for the article.
It's hard to read when the pages are stuck together.
Fool of a took. Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
Anyways, head on over to Chris's site, the Daily Norseman, the SB Nation Minnesota Vikings site. He founded the page in 2006. He's still the lead blogger over there. That's dailynorseman.com. Everything you ever want to know about the Minnesota Vikings, latest updates, great stories, great content, dailynorseman.com. We got some news. We got the preview. We got the milestone at the end of the show. But, Drewster, before we get to all that, my friend, what time is it?
Ted Gandalf, I'm cooler than you are. So why don't you fix your shire and light this candle?
He's right. Light this candle and Gondor will answer.
Yes, resume the countdown.
All right, I'm cooler than you are. Why don't you fix your little problems and light this candle?
He's right. Let's light this candle. He surely is. Light the candle.
Yes. Resume the countdown.
All right.
This show, we're going to take the ring to Mordor, Ted. See, I watched it.
There you go. There you go. We got a lot of news this week, my precious. One of the things that's going around, and there's one story that I'm not even going to entertain because it just pisses me off to even think about it. We touched on this a little bit on our post-game live show, and Kevin Seifert, the Vikings reporter for ESPN, he was the Vikings beat reporter for the Star Tribune for a while, and it's asking the question, is this team that's 8-2 a fluke like the 2022 team apparently turned out to be, or is this team more built for sustained success? I can't remember who it was in our live post-game show. One of our viewers asked that question, and I thought we really didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, so I wanted to take a little bit more in-depth time and kind of explore that a little bit more. One of the things Seifert pointed out in comparing 2022 to 2024, both teams were 8-2 to start off the year, but the 22 team finished -3 in point differential and -463 in the hole in yards, total yards. They had a -463 total yards deficit. DVOA, which is a defense adjusted value over average, which is kind of an advanced stat, and it takes team strengths versus the teams they play. It just like does some weird science calculations. Kelly LeBrock does not pop out of the bathroom at the end.
So, what would you little maniacs like to do first?
But that 2022 team was the worst DVOA in the history of that statistical measurement in like 45 years. Teams that have that metric that the Vikings had in 2022 usually finish with no more than 8 wins. And that team was, 14-3, I think it was, or 13-4.
13-4, yeah.
Yeah. They're 5th in point differential, +74. They're 9th in yard differential, +318. And the DVOA places the defense the best in the NFL when you adjust it for the offenses they have played to this point in the season. So I think this is far from being a fluky team. And I think one of the reasons they're not getting the respect that maybe they should be, I would contend, Drew Bunting, is the quarterback, the starting quarterback, Sam Darnold, based on his past reputation in the league.
Yeah, I can't say that's not going to creep up on us at the end of the year, because when you got inconsistent quarterback, you're just waiting for that game to having a game like we had against the Giants. But this is a completely different team, a better team. And even if you just look at one side of the ball, the defense, you got Flores against that numbnuts that was running the defense back in 22, and I don't even know how we won that many games with that defense, because we had a lot of good players. But the feel of this team is a lot different. They're still searching for their offensive identity, but the overall team, Ted, I have a lot more confidence than I had in that team in 2022. That 2022 team was special. We were winning a lot of games. The Buffalo game, remember all those crazy games? But we did a lot of shows. We did live shows after all those games back in 2022 also. And you, me, and Chris were always saying, man, if we wouldn't have had this one play, if we wouldn't have had this, if Jalen Waddle doesn't drop that ball, if Amir Smith-Marset doesn't hand the ball over to our team, there's always that one thing. I think we all knew that if somebody comes in and plays a clean game, that they got a good shot at beating us. I don't think that with this team. I mean, they're not unbeatable, but I'm a lot more confident with this team. I am.
A couple of things that strike me as really different between that 2022 version and 2024 versions of this team is that 2022 team had a lot of veteran players. And I don't know if you remember, but Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell were basically told by Ziggy Wilf, we think we've got a roster that has talent and can win. So before you want to do anything, go try and win with this roster to the best of your ability. Because, you still had guys like Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins, and Dalvin Cook was still on the team, Daniil Hunter, and a lot of expensive, older veteran players. So they really couldn't get rid of a lot of guys that they probably wanted to because, they had a lot of expensive contracts and all that stuff. So they pretty much did what they were told they had to do. And they proved that maybe it really was the coaching from the previous regime in a lot of respects. And yeah, they got lucky. You mentioned the Bills game, and Amir Smith-Marset in that Bears game and the fumble at the end, the Dolphins game, the Colts game where they were down, 33-0 at halftime.
Right.
And they came back to win. But this team is different in that they got rid of all those old dead contracts, they've got a lot of dead money this year, but it all goes off the books next year. So they have a healthy cap situation. Now they're kind of thin in draft picks, but they'll recoup those the year after next. They've got young players, and they got rid of guys like Daniil Hunter and replaced him with guys you already talked about, Andrew Van Ginkel, Blake Cashman, Jonathan Grenard. They got the one-year stopgap quarterback in Sam Darnold, who's going to relinquish it to J.J. McCarthy next year. I think they've got to figure out who the running back's going to be. I don't know that Aaron Jones is going to be back next year. He's on a one-year deal, and he's 30 years old, but whatever. They've got a very good young receiving corps. They still have questions they have to answer, but a lot less needs that need to be addressed with a lot more cap space than they had in 2022, I believe.
I think overall, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you're dead on with that. I look at the 2022 team being more like the 2023 team than being like us this year. I think the 7-10 team, I think the previous before 23, I think the 13-4 wasn't true identity of what the Vikings were. When they were 7-10 the following year, I kind of figured, I think that 13-4 team was more like a 9-8 team. That's how I felt. And the truth be told, when we lost to the Giants in that playoff game, I wasn't surprised. But this team, like you talked about shifting those contracts out, it's now their team.
Yes.
KOC's team, it's Mensa's team, and hell of a job in free agency. This was supposed to be just to maybe get it together and we slip in for a playoff run this year. They've overachieved this year. They're doing really well. They got to keep it going. The injuries are helping us this year. We've been pretty injury free, but I have a ton more confidence in this team than that 2022 team. I just kind of felt that 2022 team, here it comes. Something's going to happen. And unless we got these huge breaks, we didn't really stomp anybody.
No.
Did that team seem like a 13-4 team to you?
As Bill Parcells famously said, you are what your record says you are.
I don't think they were, though.
I think they caught every break imaginable just about every week. Because I think you said, it was either you or Chris said on the live show, when they won, it's because just about every break went their way.
Right.
But when they lost, they got their breaks beat off them. Was it the live watch party we had? Was it against Dallas?
40
and
they
got beat. They got blasted. They kind of got exposed that game. And that loss late in the season, I think it was to Green Bay. They got the hell beat out of them in Green Bay too. I mean, so when they lost, it wasn't a competitive loss like it was this year. When their two losses, when they lost, they had a very winnable game against Detroit. They should have, I would argue, beat Detroit. They had an opportunity to beat the Rams. They just, beat themselves, I would contend, against the Rams as well. Those were very winnable games. Their losses in 2022 weren't even close. And I think they're more set up for the long haul. I think after 2022, we all kind of resigned ourselves to, well, now it's time to tear it down, and it's going to be a couple of years before this team is competitive again. And if not even 3 or 4 years. And when they started shedding those contracts with Kirk and those longtime players like Dalvin Cook and everything else, you just sort of thought, well, we're just going to ride it out and hope that they can be competitive in 2025, maybe 2026. And it's been a pretty quick turnaround.
I don't understand how the general overview of the fans can't be psyched up more. It should be psyched up more. Everybody didn't want to keep doing the Kirk Cousins thing. We had to move on from that. Cousins exits. We get our franchise quarterback in the draft. But everybody's thinking, well, you know what? Even before he got hurt, who knows what we're going to do with Darnold? He sucked up till now. So we're just going to try to get through these games and get on to McCarthy. That's kind of was the general thinking from the fans.
Before the season, yes, I'd agree.
And then he got hurt, McCarthy. Now, instead of just getting through the games or going through the motions, the Vikings are 8-2. They're making a run at it. And if they can figure out how to be as aggressive offensively, the Vikings and Lions will be the class of this league by far, because the Lions have going on both sides, but they took another hit on their defense. Like I said in a post a couple days ago, a team that's really sailing along in late November may not be sailing along in the end of December. And the Vikings could be the team putting up 50 burgers. It feels like we're overachieving compared to what we all thought going into this season. At least I do.
Yeah, I agree. And, you talked about getting rid of Kirk and bringing in Sam Darnold. And I think that's one of the reasons most fans thought, well, this is just kind of a whatever year. I think Sam Darnold has exceeded almost everybody's expectations. He sort of had that midseason slump. You had the loss to the Rams, you had the loss to the Lions, and the Vikings offense didn't really play particularly well, even in wins against the Jets was kind of mid, the Colts and the Jags and the Titans. Sam played very well against the Titans, I thought, but the Colts game and the Jags, even though they were wins, it was just kind of an up and down performance. But I thought Darnold rebounded very well against Tennessee. And if those problems that we saw in that midseason swoon or early midseason swoon have been corrected, like we hope they have, you look at the back half of this season with some of these games coming up and the defense that this Vikings team has, they're a legit contender, man. Legitimate contender.
They are a legitimate contender. They went toe-to-toe with the Lions. And, without Hutchinson and Anzalone, they're going to be in trouble, I think, a little bit down the road here. It's a matter of wanting to get out there and take it. But I don't think anybody, including the Lions, thought the Vikings would be on their heels at 8-2.
Yeah.
And Darnold, say what you want. He makes mistakes. We're all kind of thinking, God, I hope we don't have one of those games in the playoffs where he just completely falls apart. But
right.
Talk about you are what you are. You can analyze this team and you can kind of look and see after 10 games where the Vikings are at. Darnold is better with a running game. Vikings got to get their running game together and he'll be fine. He's not an elite guy. You can take it on. He's not Joe Montana where he can just carry the team. But you know what I mean? He can't do that. That's not how he's wired. But I think the running game will reemerge if they figure out a way to keep Aaron Jones healthy. But you can't look at 2022. I don't even think it's comparable, Ted.
No, I don't think so either.
All around, this team has a lot more going for it than the 2022 team.
I do too.
All shall love me and despair.
Speaking of, contending and down the road, all 4 teams in the NFC North have played 10 games. Lions obviously currently at the top at 9-1. Vikings at 8-2. Packers at 7-3, and the Bears have kind of started their swoon and they're at 4-6. The Vikings have, 4 division games left. They got the Bears game this week, so they got 2 games against the Bears, 1 against the Packers at home, 1 against Detroit on the road. Green Bay has 3 division games left. 2 of them are on the road at Detroit, Minnesota, 1 against the Bears. Detroit has 4 division games left, 2 games against Chicago. Their Green Bay and Minnesota games are at home. They won both their road games against Green Bay and Minnesota.
Yeah, 3 of their games are at home. The only time they go on the road, I think.
Yeah, is one of their Chicago games. So 3 of their 4 remaining division games are at home. Now, you mentioned their injuries to Alex Anzalone and Aiden Hutchinson, who I would argue maybe other than Brian Branch are probably their 2 best defensive players.
I would agree. Maybe Aleem McNeil is on the outstretch of that.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah. Obviously, the Lions have the inside track to the division, home field advantage of the playoffs. They've got the Packers and the Vikings at home close to the end of the year or whatever it is. They still have some tough games, but it's not out of the realm of possibility if Jared Goff decides to come back down to earth and play like a regular human quarterback and not this out-of-orbit robot that either the Vikings and or the Packers, if the Vikings falter, could catch Detroit. Do you think that's even a possibility?
You know what was huge? Houston folding up against Detroit. Houston had that game. We needed that game. We needed to be level with Detroit after Houston beat them.
Yep.
They should have won that game. D'Amico Ryans played not to lose, played wuss ball, and he got what he deserved. He lost the game. He didn't try to win it.
I'd argue Kevin O'Connell did that against the Lions, too.
I would not argue with that. And I don't have hairy feet like Frodo Baggins either. So the more I started writing out these schedules today, I looked at Detroit, Ted, and this is how important that Houston win would have been. We'd be level right now. When you look at Detroit's schedule, I mean, go down that thing. The 2 games that I'm looking at are Buffalo and San Francisco, besides the season ender with us. Buffalo and San Francisco. Now, I think Detroit, if they finish 8 and tied with us and we have a split with them head-to-head, I wonder how the tiebreaker would go on that.
I think after that, it's head-to-head and then division record and then conference.
I think Minnesota has a tougher overall schedule, but if they can get through Chicago and then Arizona, Atlanta, then they're looking pretty good because these teams are going to fold up at the end. I don't think the Packers are going to be in it. The Packers are in a tough spot because the 2 teams that they're the NFC North is a tough division to be in if you're just mediocre. And they didn't look very good against the Bears. We'll talk more about that later, but they just snuck through with a win. The interesting thing is the Vikings and Lions are both on the road this week.
Yes.
And then they both go home for 3 straight games. They're both at home the same exact weeks. They're both going to be trying to build up their schedules to, this could come down to that last game of the season in Detroit, which I predicted that the Vikings would win. But how many games do you see Detroit losing from this way on?
Well, before I go on, so it's head-to-head, and then it's best one-loss tied percentage in games played within the division. So it's your division record after that.
Okay.
And then best one-loss tied percentage in common games. And then it's conference games. So it's common games before conference games.
And Detroit's loss was to
the Rams, I believe. And the Vikings have also lost to the Rams.
No, they didn't lose to the Rams.
Buccaneers. I'm sorry, they lost to the Buccaneers in week 2.
God, they only got 16 points against the Buccaneers. That is crazy. Yeah, it's gonna, man. These games are all critical going down the way here, and I think Green Bay is going to falter a little bit. Like I said, Green Bay could be that team that wins 11 games and don't make it anywhere.
I think Detroit loses 2, maybe 3 more games.
The third being to us, I guess. You're taking San Francisco?
San Francisco, Buffalo. They're going to San Francisco. They got Buffalo at home, and Buffalo's playing really good football. Packers division games are always weird, but that's a home game, and they pretty much dominated Green Bay, even though it was only, a 10-point, 24-14. They just sort of controlled that game, much like the Vikings. Although the score felt close with the 49ers, the Vikings controlled the 49ers game, much like the Lions controlled that Packers game in their first meeting.
If they just don't slip up in the next 4 weeks, Ted, Chicago twice, Atlanta and Arizona, 3 of those 4 at home, I think they're going to win the division. But they can't implode on any of those games because, like you said, I think Detroit loses to Buffalo, they lose to San Francisco, and they may be a game behind, but I think we're going to win at the end of the year to take the division. It's going to be tight all the way down, tight run all the way down, but Vikings just got to take care of their own business. Feels like they're at 8-2, a game behind Detroit, but it kind of feels they're in the driver's seat when I look at these schedules. I mean, is Buffalo going to be playing? Buffalo's already won the division, haven't they?
I don't think so. Let's look here real quick. Buffalo has, they're 9-2. I mean, Pittsburgh's 8-2, and Kansas City's 9-1. They're going to be playing for home field, so they're not going to.
Okay.
I mean, they're not going to be sitting anybody. Let's see. The Vikes got weird things happen in Chicago. The Cardinals are currently leading the NFC West at 6-4, and everybody else in the NFC West is 5-5. So that's going to be a dogfight to the end. Then they got the Falcons, and the Falcons are 6-5, currently leading their division. I mean, the Vikings have a very favorable schedule. It's a lot more favorable than Detroit's is.
I think it is. I think it is. And if right now, if Detroit was 9-1 and we were 7-3 instead of 8-2, I would say we don't have a shot.
Okay.
But being only 1 game behind, Buffalo's going to beat the Lions. They don't match up well against Buffalo because they get the quarterback that goes his balls out as Goff does. And I think that game in San Francisco is going to be tough.
When you look at Detroit's schedule, I mean, they've blown some teams out, but the teams they have played that are good have gone toe-to-toe with them, and just a play here or a play there, and they could very easily be 7-3.
Vikings had them, Ted.
Yeah.
Pick up a first down, you run that game. That's all. When you can play close, when it comes down to you having the ball and needing a first down, you got to make that happen. That's a W right there. That's a tie. They're tied right now if they win that game.
So, I mean, everybody's got Detroit penciled in for the Super Bowl, but, I mean, they can be had. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. They're having a great season. I think it's the best season they've had probably since they won the NFL championship back in the 50s with Bobby Lane and all that. But, I mean, they can be had. They can be. You know, you mentioned Alec Anzalone being out, 4 to 6 weeks? Hutch is out for the year. I mean, they traded for Zadarius Smith, but I don't think he's the guy he was even 2 or 3 years ago when he was with Minnesota. And then
he's not.
Before that, Green Bay. So, anyways.
Somebody's got to slow down their offense because they are toying with people. They are just brutal.
If you could stop their running game, I think you've got a legit shot to beat them. But
nobody can stop them.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the Vikings even couldn't do that. All right. So that's how we see the NFC North. When Chris comes back, we're going to do a breakdown for the rest of the season schedule and kind of see how everything pans out and where we see the Vikings ending up.
It's the next 4 weeks, Ted. You just can't lay the egg. You can't lose 12-10 to Chicago. You can't lose 17-14 to the Falcons. You can't lay any eggs. You win the next 4 games. I'm calling it right now. You win the next 4 games, you're going to win the division and the number 1 seed.
They got the Bears twice, and in between those 2 games, they got both Arizona and Atlanta at home.
No eggs.
No eggs. None.
Don't lay any eggs.
Not even deviled eggs, as delicious as they are.
Liv Tyler, still okay with the pointed ears?
Oh. Easier to grab. Allegedly.
Here we go. Toons is just going, oh my God.
For me, the intangibles is Caleb Williams is a rookie. He has struggled, and now he faces the toughest defense he will face all season in terms of what he sees pre-snap and how he reacts to it once the ball is in his hands. For Sam Darnold, can he hold on to the ball? The Bears, you know, the one thing I always hated about the Bears, they're pests. Their defense is a pest, going all the way back to Peanut Tillman, and they just have a penchant for getting the ball and creating a turnover. When they absolutely needed a play, they make one.
Bears have had that for decades, though.
Yeah.
That picky cat, that Buddy Ryan had that.
Yeah.
Gary
Yeah.
Fensick, all those kind of guys.
Can the Vikings keep that from happening? If they can keep Caleb Williams confused, which I don't think should be too difficult, and if Sam Darnold can keep the ball, can keep from turning over the ball, the Vikings should be okay.
Did you know, Ted, that the Chicago defense was only on the field for 43 plays last week against the Packers?
Wow.
43. That is not a lot for a football game. Is that going to help them in terms of freshness and energy? Who knows? But I'm just wanted to point that out. That's not a lot of time on the field. This is what happens in football, or probably in any sport. They had a big game last week where they could have took down the Packers. Big emotional. They thought it was going to be a win, turned into a loss. We played our hearts out. We left it all out in the field, yada, yada, yada. Was losing that game their Roberto Duran Sugar Ray moment? Was that Roberto Duran?
The no mas?
Yeah, because that could easily turn the next week into losing by 40 because you put it all out there the week before. Now, if they won that game, they could roll on that momentum. Vikings are coming to town. We just beat the Packers. Let's beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
But they lost that game, and they played their asses off in that game. Finally played a decent game. Because the week before, that loss to the Patriots was ugly.
Yeah.
Is it too emotional to get that close to a win, blow it against the Packers, and then they got us coming to town? How many guys are going to stand up and say, you know what I'm saying? You do get a lull. You get a lull. They could easily go in the can this week. The season's over, especially in this division. They're not going anywhere. The season is over. It's over, as Judge Judy would say.
If they'd have won that game, they'd have been 5-5 and still kind of in the thick of the wild card. Now they're 4-6. I think their playoff chances went, into the low single digits. Caleb Williams had to stand up and apologize to the team after Shane Waldron got fired. And then, you had that performance for the new OC, and that happened. It's a good question, man. I mean, you do one of two things. You respond and play the game of your life, or you check out mentally and start making tea times.
It's not like they lost by 20. They had the game. They had the field goal to win the game, emotional, and that's a big, big letdown.
Yeah.
And they did respond to the new coordinator. For the first time, they were 9 for 16 on third down. Let me throw this at you as we head to the summary. Can I do my summary now?
Sure.
Okay. Bears are second to last in converting third downs, Ted. 31.9, which is 2 weeks ago against the Patriots, they were 1 for 14 on third down, Ted.
God.
It doesn't get much worse than 1 for 14. Last week, they were 9 for 16 instead of 1 for 14. I don't know if that might just be a lucky thing with the new coordinator, but they're still trying to figure it out. But at least that's a step in the right direction for them. But they are terrible converting third downs, and that's the money down.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why they're 4-6. They only give up 18 points a game, but if you can't convert third downs, you're putting so much pressure on your defense to hold the other team to field goals. It's terrible. Vikings should control the game in the trenches, both sides. We went over that in this preview. Shouldn't even be close. Will they play down to the Bears? Will they implode? Will they let a bad team hang around? And we've seen it what is the problem with letting Indy and the Jags and the Titans? It seemed like those games should have been 20, 24-point wins. I mean, I know it's tough to win in the NFL, but a critical part of my summary today will be Chicago's success in that secondary. We talked about it. If they can slow the Vikings down and get them off their game, the secondary momentum will roll to the offense. It'll roll to the special teams, and they will build off that momentum monster. I know it sounds weird.
No, you're right.
That's what happens. And if they're going to upset the Vikings, it's going to be controlling our passing game and them somehow getting a running game. It's going to take reaching deep into the bag. And I don't know if they have the energy left after that Packers game last week. They put a lot into a loss. They wanted that game. They wanted to win. Oh, weather? We always do it, Ted. 47 degrees, mostly cloudy, only 10 miles per hour on the wind, which is low for Soldier Field. That's usually a blustering freaking tsunami or whatever.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
This matchup does not look good for the Bears. The Vikings right there, it's nice to say this every week. They control this game as long as they don't give it away.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the teams we played, Indy, Jags, and Titans, mark my words, the Bears with that secondary, they're the team that is most likely to pull an upset on the Vikings out of the 4 that we just played. That's how I see it. This is a game you cannot toy around with. Don't mess around with this game because they're not Jacksonville. They're 4-6, but If they keep it low scoring and tight, they got a good shot at winning this game. The Vikings need to know that. I think the Vikings are going to win this game.
This is going to be a tough game. Playing at Soldier Field is always tough. A division opponent on the road is always tough. Third straight road game is exceptionally tough. I think the keys to winning this game for the Vikings are running the ball and running the ball successfully. When you run the ball on first down, get 5 yards. Make it 2nd and 5, 2nd and 3. You can't get 0 or negative yards on first down. You can't shoot yourself in the foot on first down with a false start penalty or a holding penalty. Or you cannot be 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 20, 2nd and 15, whatever it is. You've got to stay ahead of the down and distance so you have your whole playbook open to you. Run play action. I don't think the Vikings ran one play action last week at all that I can remember.
Shocking.
I would use Ty Chandler more in the running game. I don't think Cam Akers is an effective runner. You cannot turn the ball over to Chicago, and when you get a turnover, I believe they can go Caleb Williams into turnovers. You have to get it deep in Chicago territory so you don't have to go the length of the field, because I don't know that the Vikings, unless you get huge chunk plays, can go the whole distance. You get it inside the 30, inside the 20, so you've only got a few plays to go. And when you do, then get it in the end zone, because you can't settle for field goals. The Bears' defense is good. You've got to take advantage of the opportunities when you are there. You've got to win the turnover battle because the Bears are ball hawks. You can't give them hope.
Look at the leaders in turnovers.
They're
This
third.
is part of the Bears' problem.
They're third in the NFL.
The Bills are plus 14, 9-2.
Mhm.
Steelers plus 11, 8-2.
Mhm.
Lions plus 9, 9-1. Texans plus 8, 7-4. Chargers plus 8, 7-3. Bears plus 9, right up there with all these teams.
Yeah.
4-6.
Yeah.
All
I
those
know.
teams I just mentioned, they're in the top 5 or 6 in turnovers, but you got that one glaring Bears 4-6.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be a plus 9 and be 4-6.
No, you shouldn't, but
what
they
the hell
are.
is going on there in Chicago?
Yeah, their offense is terrible. That's why. All right. You got your milestone, or are we done?
Milestone. Kevin O'Connell is my milestone tonight, Ted. 28 wins. One more win, and he will tie him with the great Norm Van Brocklin, who had 29 wins from 1961 to 1966.
Really?
If he can get 5 more wins, Ted, during the end of this regular season, which is, totally possible, he will pass the great Mike Tice, who had 32 wins as the Vikings head coach and move into 6th place all time.
All right.
Tice was in here, 5 years? Van Brocklin was in here 6 years. KOC's on his 3rd year. So he's he's further ahead in terms of games wise, but
Pretty impressive.
he can move into 6th all time if he can win 5 more games, but a win Sunday would tie him with Norm Van Brocklin.
Nice. The Dutchman,
He didn't like Fran Tarkenton too much.
who hated one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and demanded he be traded, and then promptly quit and went to Atlanta.
He could not
Dope.
stand. He couldn't stand Fran Tarkenton.
All right. Well, that'll put a wrap on episode 147. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks. If you would, please subscribe, like, ring the bell, do all that other stuff you're supposed to do. For Drew, for Ruby, and for Chris, who could not join us tonight, I'm Ted. Thanks, everybody. Chris will join us Sunday after the Bears game for our live post-game show, Vikings Report Rewind, right here on our YouTube channel. So join us then. Take care, folks, and SKOL Vikings.
Thank you for showing up. We love our audience, and they always make us smarter every week. Thanks for tuning in for episode 147, and we will see you next week with another studio episode.
Mordor.
So they took the rings to Mordor to destroy them? What was that's the part I lost.
Here's my thing. Why the hell couldn't you just fly there with the damn eagles?